It might surprise few that lawyers are the unhappiest people on the planet, at least when it comes to their jobs. What a ringing endorsement of the legal profession. I can't say that I'm surprised. I've heard this statistic since starting law school over 15 years ago, and I'm a new lawyer and new law student coach. And so this comes up a lot in terms of people's satisfaction and happiness in the profession. And so if you are curious about becoming a lawyer or you're just starting out, definitely stick around because we're going to go through the biggest reasons that make lawyers so unhappy and what to put in place to make sure that those unhappiness factors don't negatively impact the life and career that you are building in the law. The first piece is that law firms have the potential to be quite a toxic work environment. And that's because you could be working really long hours. So if you're doing anything for 12 to 14 hours a day, you're likely going to lead to exhaustion, burnout, resentment. And even more so than that, there's this lack of predictability and lack of ownership over your schedule. And so whether that's because a client needs something at a certain time or a partner is asking for something last minute, or you are on a case that's going to trial or a deal that's closing, you don't have the luxury of saying you're going to clock out for the night or you're going to take the weekend off. And then there's also this lack of support around being especially a junior associate. And so this lack of substantive training to even know how to do your job well, this lack of substantive mental and emotional support, and this lack of protection from partner behavior. And so it's not uncommon for partners to belittle you or criticize you or undermine you or embarrass you or refuse to acknowledge or respect boundaries or priorities outside of work. And because all equity partners are technically owners of the law firm, most of the time people will look the other way if any of this kind of behavior is happening. Lawyering also comes with inherently high stakes and high expectations. And so when you are representing someone, there is likely a lot of money on the line or somebody's personal livelihood at stake. And so when you are doing that type of work, there are high expectations that come with that. And those expectations could be coming externally from the client. They often are coming internally from the partner that you're working for. And a lot of the times they're coming from us personally. Because the people who tend to be attracted to law school and continue on to become lawyers tend to be people who are perfectionist in nature, high achievers, people pleasers that set very high standards for the work that we do. And so especially coming from an academic environment where quote unquote perfection is technically possible in the context of grades in law school and undergrad, that same mentality and that same framework is then translated into the practice of law, where it is very difficult to impossible to be quote unquote perfect, especially for a profession that you are just starting for the first time. And so there is a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of pressure that's put on our performance, both because of what the work is doing and also because of the characteristics of the people that are demanding that work of us, including ourselves. A lot of lawyers also have a tough time because they feel like they're not doing meaningful work. And I think that the biggest gap here is what we went into law school wanting to do and expecting to do versus what the reality of the practice of law day to day actually looks like. And so for a lot of us heading into law school, we wanted to help people. We wanted to make an impact. And I think a lot of us envision that as serving underprivileged communities or making these grand arguments in court or being community leaders somehow. And the reality of the day-to-day practice of law is much more corporate, much more transactional. And so especially when you're starting out, it's a lot of reviewing of documents, drafting of documents, making sort of intricate Excel spreadsheets of privilege logs or exhibit lists. And so I think that a lot of us can become disillusioned very quickly when we realize that what we're actually doing is helping individuals and businesses create, acquire, or maintain assets, money. And yes, money can make a really big difference in the life of a person or the organization of a business, but especially when you get to the level of essentially moving money around from multinational corporations from one party to another, you can start to feel like your work is not meaningful very, very quickly. And even for those of us who are practicing law in what definitely feels like being on the front lines, so things like immigration law, family law, criminal law, those practice areas can be really difficult as well, because so much of the trauma that those clients are facing is something that can really, really wear on the psyche of someone. And the other thing that is happening in a lot of those sectors is that there are so many people who need so much help, and there are so few resources to go around, that burnout is very common, where you feel like the work that you're doing, no matter how many hours you put in, is not actually moving the needle. And there's a feeling of guilt if you don't take your work home with you on the weekend, and just not being able to continue to be in a system that doesn't feel like you are making the impact that you want to make on the small scale that you're making it. So it can be a really tough catch 2022 situation, where regardless of the practice area you find yourself in, that sense of not doing meaningful work or not really moving the needle in an impactful way is still present. It's also said that lawyers are preconditioned to be pessimistic, which I think is interesting and probably not completely untrue, because in law school, we are literally trained to identify problems. We are absolutely trained to identify risk points so that we can prevent them or we can solve them. And so a lot of the time that can unwittingly or unintentionally seep into every aspect of our life, where we will approach a situation and immediately identify what is problematic about it, what is flawed about it, what is risky about it. And that really closes us off to what the potential upside is, or the benefit, or what something could grow to be. And it was really interesting because a few years ago, there was actually a Myers-Briggs study done on the population of lawyers. If you're interested in it, you can check this video out right here, where it showed what the breakdown of the personality types of lawyers across the board are. And so you can also take a personality quiz in the description below that video and see where you fall. But I definitely think it's interesting that there were certain personality types that were more prevalent among lawyers than the general population. And that process begins as early as law school, and then is continually grown and ingrained in us as we continue with the practice of law, through sort of this competitive aspect, this winner-take-all aspect, this zero-sum game that is really built into a lot of practice areas, rather than something that is collaborative or something that's building forward, or something that is more in creation mode, like you might find in other industries. Another thing that can play into these unhappiness factors for lawyers is the money. And the money can cut both ways. And so on one end of the spectrum, if you are starting out your legal career on the lower end of the salary income bracket, $45,000 to $75,000, it can feel incredibly stressful if the work that you're doing and the hours you're putting in and the service that you're giving to clients doesn't feel like it's being fairly compensated, especially when you're coming out of law school with 6 figures in student loan debt. And on the other side, making a lot of money can create problems too. And so if you are coming out of law school working in big law, making $200,000 plus a year, what tends to happen is this phenomenon known as the golden handcuffs, where people will up-level their lifestyle so that it matches the 6-figure salary they're now making, whether that's where they're living, the car they're driving, the school they're sending their kids to. And so essentially they create this prison for themselves, where they don't feel like they have the freedom to leave, because their entire livelihood depends on them making this multi-6-figure salary. And so the money piece, especially when it's combined with the long hours, the type of work, the expectations that are placed on lawyers, can really, really, really wear people down and make people feel very unfulfilled in the profession. So if lawyering causes so much unhappiness, should anybody be a lawyer? And the way that I think of this is, if you are curious about the practice of law, I encourage you to lean into that, because the factors that are contributing to the unhappiness of lawyers in the legal community are structures and frameworks that are put in place by those of us in the legal community. They're created by us. They are man-made and woman-made. And so if we are wanting to make those shifts, if you are somebody who is interested in making the legal profession work in a different way, relate to each other in a different way, then the legal community absolutely needs you. And so if you are already in the practice of law and you're really looking to make this shift, not only for yourself, but for the people coming after you as well, The biggest thing that I can probably say is to put yourself in a position mentally and financially to be able to pursue the legal career you actually want. Because the lawyers that I have seen that are the happiest, that are the most lit up, that are the most fulfilled, are those who have been able to shed this expectation structure of what a legal career should look like or should be or what they should do, and also put themselves in a place financially where they can pursue curiosities, where they can take a pay cut and practice a different type of law or in a different sector or leave the practice of law altogether. And so that would be my number one encouragement for you guys just starting out and pursuing this career early on, is to think forward to this permission structure, to give yourself the freedom and the flexibility to do the things that are unconventional if and when you decide that those are going to be the things that you want to try next. And so for those of you guys who are looking to take that next step, I would definitely recommend checking out this "What Type of Lawyer Should I Be" quiz. It will give you a window into the best fit type of law for you so that you can get a jump start on knowing where your values and where your curiosities might lie. I'll definitely drop the link in the comments as well. All right, guys, I hope that this video was helpful. I hope it gave you something to think about, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.